Johnny Test was, at one point, the greatest cartoon ever, with over 9 years of trivia spanning 6 seasons, 230 episodes, over 30 recurring characters, tons of awards, a video game, and some of the best TV ratings on the network. Johnny Test was a master compared to fellow cartoons on the networks it was featured on. But as time went on and it picked up more traction, the quality went down significantly until it was eventually cancelled in 2014, making it the 33rd longest running animated cartoon of all time. So what happened to the kid with flaming hair and his talking dog? Let's find out. Welcome back to the Downfall of Cartoons, where we take a look at a cartoon that was once awesome, but slowly went downhill until its literal or figurative demise. Today we take a look at Johnny Test, one of the most famous and yet infamous cartoons of the 21st century. Created by Scott Fellows in 2005, Johnny Test follows the story of an enthusiastic and ignorant Johnny and his talking dog Dookie, as they are the test subjects for the experiments of Johnny's two genius twin sisters Susan and Mary. With a cleaning-obsessed dad and a working mom, the plot for Johnny Test might not seem too great, but instantly resonated with audiences and eventually found its place on Cartoon Network. This was the first animated series for Scott Fellows, after he created Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, wrote some key episodes of Fairly Odd Parents, a show I've covered before in the series, and would later go on to create Big Time Rush, 100 Things to Do Before High School, and Super Noobs. But on February 16th, 2005, the Kids WB block on the WB network announced 4 new series coming to the catalog, including Lunatics Unleashed, Coconut Fred, Transformers Cybertron, and Johnny Test. Between the 4 shows, Lunatics Unleashed was a Looney Tunes spin-off as far as I know, that only ran for 2 seasons until it was cancelled in 2007. Coconut Fred was a critically hated show, being called a SpongeBob ripoff by even the voice actor of the main character. It also ran for 2 short seasons before being cancelled in 2006. And Transformers was a weird one that was cancelled the very same year it was released. And through all that, Johnny Test remained on television and eventually moved up to Cartoon Network, while the rights went to Cookie Jar Entertainment and then DHX Media, or Wildbrain. Now that we know a little bit about the show that seemingly took the world by storm, let's delve a little deeper into it season by season, as we completely understand the hit that was Johnny Test. The first season of Johnny Test is actually a pretty great cartoon, hence the title of this video. Looking back at it, it's a pretty simple concept, but they managed to make it very interesting and actually really funny. While the theme song used in this season is my personal least favorite compared to the other 3, which are pretty much identical, I still love this song. The "Another Day in the Life of a Boy" part in particular was pretty iconic. But the graphics are a bit less than stellar. The season, though, is pretty amazing. For example, the characters are not flanderized to oblivion and jump off each other very well here. It's like they belong in a show together in this season, unlike what it would be as the show would go on. The jokes are also really funny. I remember as a kid I always laughed and quoted this show, even from the later seasons, because I was a stupid child to know nothing of quality. But looking back at it now, this season at least is pretty hilarious. Some of my favorite episodes include Little Johnny, Johnny's House of Horrors, and probably my favorite episode of the show, Johnny Dodgeball. The animation is very expressive with nice facial expressions and clever character designs, and I just love the cell animation look personally. For the first season, it did a great job establishing things like that, which is one of the reasons I firmly believe the show became as successful as it did. Another thing I respect is that I can actually breathe when I'm watching these episodes, because there's not a Whipcrack sound effect every 2 seconds. Predominantly, season 1 of Johnny Test was a great start to the series, and I think that's because of the simplicity of the humor and plots. What made this show iconic was its simplicity. When other cartoons tried too hard to focus on intricate plot lines and characters, season 1 of Johnny Test reveled in the fact that the show was just super simple by design, and embracing that simplicity ultimately led to this being arguably the strongest season of this show.
Tiptoe through the window, try the window, that is where all become.
While my Discord server seems to heavily think that Season 1 is the best season, I personally think that Season 2 is pretty close to Season 1's brilliance. So good job Kyle, Cargo, and Kyo, who voted for both of them for some reason. Season 2 was a simpler time of actually funny jokes and clever plots with subtle morals. This season really defined Johnny Test's style of humor. It's really hard to put into words, but some of the jokes are intended for all ages, I guess. And it makes it really funny if you're a kid or an adult who understands the more mature parts of some dialogue. Like, come on, Senior Smoothie Buns is a hilarious joke, and try to tell me this isn't kinda chuckle-worthy either.
How many times are we gonna fall for Johnny's stupid Gil tricks?
Special invitation here for Gil's super private pool party.
Pool party!
But you have to admit, that is funny.
And while there are some episodes that are as funny as an inflatable dartboard, like Hoist the Johnny Roger, there are some awesome ones, including Fat Johnny, Johnny vs. Bling Bling Boy 2, Johnny in Black and White, Johnny the Kid, and Rockabye Johnny, where Johnny or other characters actually learn lessons by the end of the episode. Also, I know most cartoons are like this, but why is the word Johnny in every episode title? It seems a little forced at points, but I digress. In all these episodes, the structure is pretty similar. It starts with Johnny having some sort of problem that him and Dookie try to solve by going to his sisters. Either the sisters do an experiment on him that starts another conflict, or the more common version, the sisters make an invention that is too dangerous for Johnny, or always has a bug in it, that he always sneakily steals or manipulates and messes up the city with, and then they stop the problem in the end. That story structure is pretty common, and I personally think they definitely overused it as the show would go on. Oh, and did I mention the characters aren't completely exaggerated?
That's a life. That's what all the people say.
As we move through the seasons, the quality starts to noticeably decline, but season 3 is still a decent season in my opinion. It keeps you entertained and the plots still feel necessary, which is more than a lot of other shows can say at this point. But some annoying aspects do start to seep through the cracks. For one, this season is incredibly fast-paced, and even though the show is pretty fast-paced from the start, this season takes it to a whole nother level just so the 5-year-olds don't change the channel after a day of school. To be fair, there are some good episodes like Here Johnny Here Boy, Johnny Escape from Bling Bling Island, and Johnny Applesauce, which by the way had some of the most memorable quotes from the whole show. And the 2-part season finale was pretty awesome too, but some episodes, especially some written by Mark Fellows, who I think is Scott Fellows' brother, like Johnny Foo or Bath Time for Johnny, didn't really hit the mark for me. Speaking of which, the Bath Time episode has some really inconsistent animation in some parts, like the clips you see on screen right now. I don't know if this was an intentional animation change, but it seems more like 2 different companies were animating this at once. But if it was intentional, I can't say I'm surprised, because this season in particular had a lot of scenes that you can tell were made because of the passion that the creators have for cartoons. There's tons of fourth wall breaks, reference to Scooby-Doo and Pokemon, and jokes like how Johnny rides through the painted cliff in Johnny vs. Bling Bling 3 are clearly nods to some of the best classic cartoons of all time, like Coyote and Roadrunner. This season also started the weird trend of racing episodes, where they basically bring every secondary character to race each other for a prize, and this will get a bit more repetitive as the show would go on, but it seems a bit forced to make every bad guy suddenly super good just to join in Johnny's stupid race. Speaking of secondary characters, this season marked the introduction of one of my favorite characters, Dark Vegan, who I'm really surprised wasn't introduced in a classic episode on second viewing. I think compared to the amazing cast of secondary characters like Bling Bling, Gil, Mr. Black and Mr. White, and some of the honestly annoying villains like Brain Freezer and Mr. Mittens, Dark Vegan is definitely up there on the list. And while we're on the topic, let's go over the voice actors. I love James Arnold Taylor, and he's honestly the perfect Johnny. I definitely prefer Louis Shrillo over Trevor Duvall for Dookie. I really wish he stayed over the whole series. And I think Johnny's dad, Mr. Black and Mr. White, Dark Vegan, and Bling Bling are all spot on as well. Other than Mary in some episodes and Susan's voice getting on her nerves sometimes, as well as Dookie's recasting, the voice acting is really great.
And my sisters, Susan and Mary.
What's up?
And of course,
Johnny,
Dookie!
put that thing away.
Isn't this totally awesome? They even have microphones in Canada.
Anyway, the Whipcrack is beginning to slowly devour my insides. And wait, did Dookie just eat chocolate? Welcome to Season 4, the season that didn't need to exist, but did anyway. This was when the show's rights were sent from CW over to Cartoon Network, and it's also when the show took a turn for the worst. Wonder if that says anything. Joking aside, as the show goes on, I've noticed that the episodes become very repetitive, especially when half of them are about the same 5 things of Johnny X, racing episodes, Johnny vs. Bling Bling, and a couple others. This isn't necessarily a problem if the formula was interesting on its own, but it's so simple by design that, like I mentioned before, it doesn't really work when you do it over and over. I'm personally okay with these episodes existing, in fact I love some of them, but I do think they don't really need to exist outside of money. My favorites from this season include Tom and Johnny, which is a hilarious reference to Tom and Jerry, obviously.
I can't believe it. Where have I seen this before? It's like I'm living in a cartoon sometime.
The reference to Charlie Brown and good old Johnny Test.
I'm telling you, I've seen this somewhere before.
What's with the doghouse?
I have no idea.
The reference to Cat in the Hat and Sleepover at Johnny's.
This isn't what it looks like.
Oops, wrong clip.
But there can be no more sleepovers here and for you, because schlupper wupper nupper dupper flupper number 2.
The self-parody in Johnny Reanimated.
I wish I was a squash and stretch cartoon like them.
And I think the episode Johnny's BFF is really interesting, since it's the episode where Mom and Dad temporarily find out about Dookie talking. It reminded me of Meet the Odd Parents from Fairly Odd Parents, a show I've covered before, but I really wish this had been as special like that, and that they really fleshed this concept out a bit more. I also really loved the episode where they basically parodied YouTube and made fun of Fred from back in the day. But right now, it's one of the only cartoon pop culture references that aged decently. Some terrible episodes include Johnny's Royal Flush, Johnny's Trophy Case, which I have reviewed in the past, and an episode where Johnny gets a talking pimple, not even joking. I have to say, the animation in the show immensely dropped after the animation changed from cell to flash in Season 2. And while I think Season 2 looked the best, the flash animation got more and more inconsistent and lazy as the show went on. Like, come on, they use the exact same design every time Dookie gets hurt. I can't believe I'm saying this, but take some inspiration from John K. and have different facial expressions every time. And oh, do I hear whipcracks? Yup, starting around here, the whipcrack started to become a noticeable thing. And while we haven't yet reached the epitome of whipcrack mania, it is definitely too much already. Jesus, this show has more sound effects than an Elmer Earl Hartman IV cartoon.
What is that?
It is called a casserole.
Squid's Visit flashbacks.
Non, rien de rien.
Alright, before we go any further, let me just say that Trevor Duvall as Dookie and Brittany Wilson as Mary again was not a good choice at all on a casting level. Have nothing against those two people, but they just weren't made for these characters. And yes, I know Wilson was also Mary in Season 1, but this could be a criticism for that too. Although it is kind of interesting how the good voice for Mary moved on to My Little Pony after this. Anyway, the animation in this season is also garbage. Running cycles are terrible, character models are often reused over and over as I mentioned before, and the characters' eyes often look really weird and poke out of their outlines. Just screams lazy if you ask me. Oh, and can I just say something? They've completely run out of originality. Why do we need 100 racing episodes? Oh, racing too much for you? Let's do a prank war episode that's literally the same thing. Let's do a snowball fight that's literally the same thing. Let's take this episode that has nothing to do with racing and make the characters race. Hey guys, you know what we really need? More racing episodes. Now look, I love racing episodes as much as the next guy. Okay, that's a lie, but there's still a way you can make them good. Don't do the same thing 100 times. And it's not just the episode plots either. Every plot is about Johnny bribing the girls with Gail, bribing Dookie with steak, bribing Bling Bling with Susan, and when they really want to mix things up, bribing Johnny with video games and candy. You realize that it's not entertaining to watch the same plot over and over, but just with slightly different inventions and monsters, right? Every episode involves some rogue animal or alien or invention destroying the city. By the way, how do they keep rebuilding the city every episode? Taxpayer money must be through the roof. Like, come on, Johnny Testosterone.
You know Needle's upset.
You know he hates needles!
You're not even trying anymore. And hey, Johnny, Susan, Johnny, didn't we already get body swishing and Papa Johnny? Hey Johnny Irresistible, did you forget that this literal exact same plot was just Johnny Smells Good from 1 season ago? And it's not just these. There's Johnny Goes Camping. Johnny Alternative is literally, what would happen if we switched everyone's genders? And when they're not recycling old plots, we get episodes where Dookie becomes a skater girl who forgets who Johnny is. Who comes up with this stuff? We get one episode where Brain Freezer becomes a good guy, but he just returns again in another episode. And look, it sounds like I really hate the season, and I do, but there's still some decent episodes, like the Christmas episode and My Dinner with Johnny. But the problem is that in most of the episodes, the characters are all bitter and annoying and don't learn their lessons by the end, something that always happened in the first seasons. And a much bigger problem, in my opinion, is that
It wasn't that funny.
oh no, Season 6. Look, I'm not gonna beat around the bush here. Season 6 is the worst season of this show, hands down. I binged all of the show for this video, and other than Season 6 being the most painful season of my life, it was also incredibly frustrating to get through for some reason. Literally not one episode is above mediocre in my opinion. The best of the season would probably be Road Trip Johnny, Johnny's Chipmunk Chit Chat, and I guess the last chapter was clever too, but none of these are even above average to begin with. The worst episodes of the season, and probably the whole show, include Johnny Best Dookie, How to Train Your Johnny, Johnny's 100th and next episodes, Johnny's in Charge, and Crash Test Johnny. And Johnny's #1 fan is just so stupid that I can't help but love it. There were some funny jokes sprinkled throughout the season, like,
Honey, why are you petting the meatloaf?
Why are you not petting the meatloaf?
Maybe you need a hobby.
or,
Since I hold the online record in cartwheelie sevens,
You win!
huzzah.
but most of the time, the episodes aren't funny at all. The new characters are annoying with really obnoxious voices, and there's really not much else to say because everything is just so bland and mediocre in this season. The animation is complete garbage in most episodes, and every episode is super repetitive and meaningless. And the sound effects are... wait, what's that?
Well, that sounded bad. That's also not a great sound.
I'm just thinking.
Still waiting for something that sounds good.
Powers, so
I
this
may
makes
have
people do
the
the
power,
opposite.
but you heard what
If
black and
we
white
zap
said.
'em
No
again,
heroin,
they'll go
especially
crazy.
flying, which
They
means
go
dirty
crazy.
talk
They
ain't
go
out.
crazy.
Johnny, you think I don't have anything better to do than straight logic to that? Your logic has a less than stellar track record. So, I'm getting this back to your sister.
But it took a lot of trial and error before our sound guy found that perfect sound effect. In the end, we went with what works best.
Where am I? Ah, reuse character designs! Reuse character designs everywhere! Flanderized characters, stay back! Sound effects! All I can hear are sound effects! Ah! Wait, I think I can see the light! No! So what caused the downfall of Johnny Test? Well, there may not be one true answer, but I think there's a couple of reasons for why this show wasn't remembered too fondly after it ended. It definitely started off good, and it had a lot of potential, but the corporate side of things meant the show was tampered with by 3 companies, and that's never good for maintaining consistency for a cartoon. For instance, the CW transfer resulted in lots of budget cuts to the show, leading to a hiatus in the mid-seasons, and why Season 2 started being animated in Flash. And another astonishing part of this corporate meddling includes the fact that when Cookie Jar took ownership of production, they let go of all the writers, storyboard artists, and artists who worked on the first season. And just like the changing crew in shows like SpongeBob, it wouldn't prove very well in the end. So other than corporate meddling and changing crew, what else directly impacted the quality of Johnny Test? Well, for one, the comedy wasn't very good as the episodes went on. As I mentioned before, the animation got cheaper and lazier, and eventually just sucked entirely. Stories were recycled and became incredibly repetitive and predictable. Voice actors were replaced, leading to some less than stellar performances. Sound effects were overused until one disgusting soundbite became their bread and butter. All these things combined to make Johnny Test have an exponential dip in quality, and eventually be hated by most of its core audience. The once beloved show that was clever, funny, and looked great became stale, boring, and annoying, and ultimately contributed to the downfall of many other animated programs at the time. Sure, the creator eventually moved on to greener pastures, some greener than others, but the first Scott Fellows animated show never ended with some dignity. However, I don't know about you, but I still hold this show close to my heart and think that, at its peak, it was one of the funniest cartoons on television. Hey, you could just say that Johnny Test was the greatest cartoon ever. So that's the video. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed, please be sure to subscribe and click the bell to support me and the channel. And while you're at it, tell me your thoughts on Johnny Test in the comments below, and share the video if you really want to help me out. Huge shoutouts to Manuel for drawing the animated bit near the end of the video, and all of the drawings in the title cards. He is super talented and an awesome dude, so check out his channel and Twitter with the links below. If you want to be up to date with everything on me and the channel, you can follow me on Twitter at Mr. A.S.K, and join my amazing Discord server to chat with our growing community of users. Speaking of, congrats to Elliot on winning the meme challenge in the server, where the winner gets a shout out in this video. The music credits and all the sources will be in the description below, and I apologize if this video didn't contain many HD clips, especially for the earlier seasons. I literally spent some days just searching for any HD pictures or clips from this show, but it doesn't seem like anyone cared about this show enough to upload any. Other than all that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you beautiful ladies and jellyfish next time. Ciao!